All right, so here we have the story of the bronze serpent. The Jewish people complained too much, came along these serpents and started killing them, biting them. And God told Moses, you want to save the Jewish people? Take a serpent, put it on a pole. Moses made a bronze serpent and he put it on a pole, and everybody that looked up, they got saved because they were looking in the direction of God. Right? So like I just said, Itab Mishnah, it says, and there's a Mishnah in the 3rd chapter of Rosh Hashanah. Alza on this, it says, looking up at a snake, that stopped all these serpents. What do you have a snake for? It says, no, they did not the snake. When they looked up at God in the direction of the heavens. Right? The heavens are very inspiring, more inspiring than the earth. Look up at the heavens and you see that there seems to be infinite. And that comes to make you think that maybe there's something infinite, maybe something bigger than me. And you start thinking, who created the heavens? God. And you look up at the heavens. That's what saved the Jews, looking up at heaven. Bisman Israel, when the Jewish people look up, Mishabdim at Libam, and they attach their hearts, Lavim Shabashamayim, to their Father in heaven. Mishabdim is Libam, and they attach their hearts to their Father in heaven. And that's what saved them. So it's not that Moses put the serpent on the pole, that the people look up at the serpent. It's just that they'll look in the direction up at heaven, and that'll save them. So Kasha, so we got a question. Why do you have to have a snake? Ella, but that if somebody got bitten by the snake, if someone got bitten by one of these serpents, tell everyone to just look up. What do you have to look at the snake for? And because they look up at the snake, they'll be automatically looking up at the heavens. Just say, look at the heavens. What do you have to look at a snake for? But Odin also, Maui staklus kalapi maila. What does it mean if the snake bites you? Look up. Why? Because God is found in heaven. That's not right. Halom avura inyan tefillah. It says, Sha'il einav lamata. It says when you pray that your heart should be up, your eyes should be down. God is everywhere. We want him to be revealed here in the world. Your heart should be up to understand and have a feeling that I'm being encompassed by something bigger than me. That's the heavens. But where I want to bring God, I want to bring it down here in the world. So not your eyes should be looking up. Not only that, God is everywhere. Why look up? Right? You can look anywhere. Look in your prayer book. Look at. Close your eyes. Think about God. You have to look up. Not only that, what is going to induce you to look up at God in the direction of the heavens and think about God? A snake on a pole. What type of a thing is that? The whole thing makes no sense. The Rebbe is going to explain. It's going to make a lot of sense. Let's understand, first of all, what is the idea? Why the soul comes into the world. So the whole purpose that the soul comes into the world is the davik bekono, in order to cling to God. The avavir, with love and fear. The ikra devekus, and the main clinging to God is in prayer. Shatevos, that the words of prayer, heim yoter krovim lahavanat adam, to understanding of man. Certainly before the soul comes out from heaven into this world, after a person dies and leaves the body, the soul has more of a clinging to God, the yira, more love and more fear of God. The soul, as it is in heaven, it feels that it's a creation. It feels how tremendously indebted it is to God. The soul feels how amazingly precious and awesome God is. It has love and fear of God. When the soul comes into the body doesn't allow it to do its work. What's the work? The work is supposed to be to serve God. Well, the body prevents us from doing so. So why does God put us into the body? The body doesn't help us do our job. Adarab, exactly the opposite. Machmas chumur, because the body is so physical, yachriach and neshama, it actually forces the soul, lehanos ap migufnius, that the soul actually gets pleasure and connection to physical things, to do the opposite of what God wants. Even though the soul doesn't want to do this, because the source of the soul is a chelak elokam yimal, is a part of God from above. The ritzon litabek baboro, and the desire of the soul is to be connected to the truth, to God, more. So why did God put the soul in the body? It's explained in the Zohar. Says that a person that does not transform bitterness to sweetness, he cannot go up to heaven. What does that mean? There's all sorts of different levels of heaven and reward that God gives. God is never remains a debtor. If a person does bad in this world, he's going to get it somehow. Or if a person does good, he's going to get it. But there's all sorts of different levels of bad and different levels of good. For sure, a person that's a thief or whatever, he's not going to get the same punishment as a person that's just lazy, doesn't do anything. On the other hand, a person that does what he's supposed to do and does all the commandments and everything, but he doesn't have any love or any fear. He doesn't transform his urges, his physical urges, to godly urges. It's not the same thing as a person that just lives his life but does what he's supposed to do. Says the Rebbe, the whole essence of man, why God put us in the world is Zeh kol adam lo nivra, a person was not created elo bishvil zeh, to transform the world, to transform bitterness to sweetness. Shahari, because behold, b'bayis rishon, in the first temple, lo yem ispalim kolal, there was no prayers, and also in the second temple, Tiknu Anshe Kadesa Gadola, the men of the great assembly, they just had very short prayers. Ubavadai, certainly kol avodas shalayim was ki'im al derech zeh, their service was to transform dark bitterness to sweetness. And nowadays we have to have all these prayers and things in order to do it. Why? Because ki dinin mitaknim b'shorsham. If you want to fix up this world, the only way you can do it is like we had with the red cow, right? You want to start to fix up the world, which we said was represented by the red cow. You got to get to the source of the severities. We said in the case of the red cow, the source is the basic element from which the world is made is earth. Earth, it just is, it's there. So is also all the rows, all the bad things, and all the severities, disappointments, frustrations, diseases, death. Rahman Aslan, God help us. Shinitava, which were created in the world, the source comes from, which enlivens them, is good. God is creating everything. Kamoshla Zona, like a prostitute in Ben Melech, with the king's son. You ever this story? King's son and the prostitute. What's the story of the king's son and the prostitute? One second, I'll tell you in a minute. Once there was a king in the Zohar. Shekol Ratzona, that the whole desire of this prostitute, Shechefza, and her goal, Shalol Etzayat Oto, that the king's son, the prince, should not be tempted by her. Ubezet Titaneg, and this she'll get more pleasure that the king will Shetihei Ahuva Lamelech, that she will be appreciated by the king. What's the story? The king wants to know what his son is made of. If his son is just a regular, what they call it, a profligate, a loose person, and he'll use all of his money and all of his position and all of his power to just himself, just have a good time. And he's got millions of dollars. He can do whatever he wants to, right? With whoever he wants to, however he wants to, when he wants to. He can do anything he wants. The question is, what does he want? What does the king's son want? What does he really want? If the king's son just wants to have a good time, so he's like everybody else, and he'll destroy the whole kingdom. If the king's son remembers all the time, I am a prince, I am a king, I cannot be like everybody else. How is he going to? So the king's son, he's a a lusty sort of a guy, a masculine sort of person. So the king picks a beautiful prostitute, exactly what his son would like. Right? He heard his son once saying, he likes, short girls with red hair or something. Exactly what he wants, that's what he gets. He finds out. And he has this woman come and try to entice him and lure him and make him act like a normal person. And she tries her best. She does everything she can. And the king is paying her top dollar to try to, deep down inside, she hopes that the king's son will not follow her. On the other hand, she has to provide him with a genuine temptation because the king wants to know really what's going on inside of his son, really what's making him tick, his son. Is he going to act normal? Is he going to follow his normal, natural desires like every normal person would do? Or is he going to be like a king? And he's going to think only in terms of what's the good of the whole kingdom, not about himself. And going after prostitutes is not part of it. But that's just it's not going to benefit anybody. So what's going to be? So on one hand, she has to do a really, really good job to test the essence of his soul, where it's at, what he's willing to sacrifice in order to maintain his royalty. But on the other hand, deep down inside, she hopes that the prince will withstand all of her temptations. And if the king does, and she does a really, really good job, then the king will really appreciate her. Thank you, you have tested my son and proven him to be loyal and steadfast, etc. Masha'enkin, it's not so. If she succeeds in enticing him, but tochalo, and she conquers him, the king really doesn't want that. So here we have this big sort of a paradox. On one hand, the king wants this woman to really test his son and to really do everything possible that any normal person would not be able to withstand. But on the other hand, he wants that his son should withstand it. He should stand the test. If he withstands the test, everybody's happy. The king's son is happy because he's maintained his royalty. The king is happy because he knows that his son will carry out. The prostitute is also happy because she really tested him to the utmost and proved what his essence of his soul is. Right? He had to forego all of the other urges and messages that his soul was sending him. Just, how do you say it? Just do it. That's what the rabbis say. Satanu penina l'shem shamayim niskavnu. Says that the devil and penina, it's two levels of evil. L'shem shamayim niskavnu. Masculine, feminine. Like it says in another place. Natan ena b'migdash rishon v'echrivo. Mashma shenitkanebo. Says that what the devil and that they put their eyes on the first temple and they were jealous of it because they were serving God. So the devil was given permission to destroy it. So if so, it means that we're put into this physical world in order to defy the bad part of the world and be brave, be powerful, know what our true identity is. But the world does a really good job of testing us. We're going to see that's going to be the serpent. The source of evil is really good. Just like this prostitute who sent her? The king. Like it explains in the Zohar, of the marid, B'mari, is there a servant that rebels against his master? Who is the servant here? The evil impulse, the angel of death. He's not going against God. Even though there's a lot of kings, there are a lot of servants. That they do rebel against their master. But those are called physical. And we see in the physical world, there are times when there's rebellions of the servants against the master. Human, but they're separate. But the servants of God, namely the angel of death, that it receives its life from God, God enlivens everything. How can God give life to a thing that's against him? So it must be that the angel of death that's going, so to speak, trying to entice us, the angel of death is also the evil impulse. It's trying to entice us to do sins and to be depressed and to be aggressive and to have all sorts of lusts and all these things. Really, it's doing God's bidding, like the prostitute. This is al derech mashal, like the prostitute with the son of the king. So God is enlivening all of the bad in the world. But the source of all the evil in the world is really good. Of course, you're going to ask a question, and I also asked the question, what could possibly be the good in Hitler or Stalin or whatever, that they killed millions of Jews, just killed millions of people? What's the good? So the answer to that is very simple. I don't know. And when it comes, and the Mashiach will come and he'll explain, you have to leave some things up to God. You can't. Some things you have to believe in. What can we do? Nevertheless, when it comes down below, it becomes really true bad. When it comes into the world, it becomes truly bad, just like the prostitute. When she's separate from the king, so she has to act like she's against the king, that she is trying to entice the king's son, which is the future of the country, to be normal, to be selfish, to be destructive. Because it could be when this evil comes into the world, and its source is very good. When it comes into the world, then it is true severity and bad, whether spiritual things or physical things. But all the other religions in the world, idolatry. When a person comes, therefore, when a person comes to a person, is Yisurim, you should think, when there comes to a person, difficulties in life, hardships in life, frustrations, disappointments, heartbreaks, God forbid, Yakshav, a person should think, don't judge things superficially. That really it is bad. But really the source of it is good. Because from God, doesn't come anything bad. Only total good. It's just not understandable. Because it's so good, it can't come to this world and it remains above. Like, for instance, it says those people who died, gave their lives because they're Jews. So that's if you want to call it, the greatest test there can possibly be. You have in America, you have these soldiers that get the Medal of Honor, right? Because they stood in situations where there was death all around them. Any normal person would never do the brave things that they did, and they defied death, and they did it. But so it comes out that because there was an enemy, and because so they got this big medal. They would have rather not done it at all. But the fact is, they only became patriots, and they became, I'd say, the courageous heroes, because there was difficulties. So you have to look at the world that it's a challenge, and it's a challenge directly from God. And that's what's called michla dekik. This is what's called shu be'emet chayuto yitbarech. This is what's called like a small sliver of life that is the truth, that it keeps everything alive, which this really comes from God. And a simple way of saying it, God doesn't always do what we want, but he always does what we need. And so, like I say, there's things, of course, I can't explain. I'm not trying to explain that the Holocaust was really good and it was really, all the tortures of the Jewish people were really good. Mashiach is going to explain when it's good, but he's going to have a lot of explaining to do. But when he does explain, it's going to be something really amazing. That's what it says, you're serving God, but kol meodecha. It says you have to serve God with all of your heart and all of your soul and all of your might. All of your might means all of your being. Kamayim tov me'od. It says when God created the world, he said he saw what he made and it was good. He tov. And the last day he said it was tov me'od. It says tov, that it was good. It says that's the angel of life. Tov me'od, that's the angel of death. Shu tov me'od, that it's very, very good. Beli shiur, without any limit. El Shaddai lo boli yadei, it hasn't come revealed. There is in the world a thing called sports, right? Sports, multi-trillion dollar, whatever business, quadrillion dollar business. And the whole thing of sports is exactly this. competition, one side against the other one. And the better that the players are, the better the opposition, the more interesting it is. Then you get up to the upper leagues and the professional and the super professional, the heavyweight and the this and that, right? It becomes more and more interesting the more opposition. If there's no opposition, that's good. It's good to not have opposition. But on the other hand, it's not very good. Very good means overcoming opposition. And the stronger the opposition, the better that it is. On the other hand, it's more of a test, more of a challenge, more of a battle. But that's the whole purpose of bad in the world, that we defy it. And we also defy the results of it, right? Most people, they go through the war, they get depressed, they get crazy. To defy that. That's what King David said. Yasar Yisraeli God tortured me. Shehu b'tchila is in the beginning of the name of God. Yud K. The first two letters of God's name, which are the highest, those are what bring all the tortures and the bad things into the world, because it's so high it can't be revealed to be good. The Enum Musa, you can't understand. Everything comes from God, but there are some things that are so tremendously good that we haven't got vessels to receive them. But it comes from God. If it's not good, then what is it? It comes to us to be interpreted to the bad. We haven't got vessels to receive it. It's too much. This is the story of Nachum Ish Gamzu. What's the story of Ish Gamzu? He said, Gamzu Latova. Because Shahayim is born, and he thought with truth that the source of bad comes from good. And really, he brought from above the Shoresh Makor and Sham. Makor. I'm sorry. Veheviu Lamaila, and he took the bad El Shorsho to its source, Lamakom Ayin, of, so to speak, nothing. And there it could change, like Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa said, to the oil that it should light. Okay, what's the story? So this, and then tomorrow we'll continue. Nachum Ish Gamzu. What's the story with Nachum Ish Gamzu? Nachum Ish Gamzu, it says that the king of Rome, he made a decree against the Jews. And the Jews wanted to appease the king of Rome somehow or other. But they didn't know what to do. What could they do? Threaten him, they couldn't threaten him. Bribe him, they couldn't bribe him. The king has everything. But they decided maybe somehow or other they could appease him and show their goodwill. So they took Nachum, a man called Nachum Ish Gamzu. That was his nickname. Nachum was his first name. It was called Ish Gamzu, a person that was said also this. He always used to say, everything that happened, he would say, this is also for the good. This is good. So they gave him a box of diamonds, a little box with diamonds and jewels in it. The king needs diamonds, jewels, but they figured the king will see, these Jews, they don't have a lot of money, and they put these diamonds worth like, $1 million, something in a box, and they're giving it to me. So just the gesture. So they gave it to this Ish Nachum Gamzu, an impressive looking person. And he was an old man, and he walked to Rome or wherever the king was. On the way, he stopped off at an inn. And the owner of the inn sensed thieves have a smell. They can smell. He understood that in this box that Nachum Ish Gamzu was trying to conceal, there was something really valuable. So he was a good pickpocket, or a good whatever's lock breaker. And he, when Nachum Ish Gamzu went to sleep, so he somehow or other picked the lock of this box, opened it up, took out all the diamonds, replaced it with sand. Took sand from his backyard, replaced it with sand, packed it with sand, closed it back up, put back the lock. Nachum Ish Gamzu woke up in the morning, and he did not sense at all that anything was amiss. And he went in front of the king, and the king said, okay, what do you want? The king is standing there with all of his entourage, with his soldiers, with his police and his protectors. And the king is the king like the world, he could just slap his fingers and you're finished. So he says, Your Majesty, I have come from the Jewish people from Israel, and I brought you a present of our admiration for the king, and I have a request. Open the box. The king opens up the box. The sand. Says, what is this? What are you doing? You're trying to make fun of me. King all of a sudden flies into this rage. Nachum Ish Gamzu says, this is also for the good. This is also, which is not for the good, because he's going to take off Nachum Ish Gamzu's head and go and just destroy all the Jews. You're trying to make a fun of me, bringing up a box full of sand. I'm lacking sand. All of a sudden, there appears this very stately looking person, and it happens to be Elijah the prophet, who Elijah the prophet died, 100 years earlier. Elijah the prophet says, Your Majesty, the king sees this honorable looking person. He says, Your Majesty, don't get mad. This sand was the sand that Abraham, their forefather, used against his enemies. Abraham, the whole world hated him, and he defeated all of his enemies. There's a story in the Torah that he defeated these 4 big kings that had conquered, they won this big battle. Anyway, this is his secret weapon. What type of secret weapon is that? He says, you throw this, it turns into darts and arrows and knives and spears, and it'll kill all your enemies. Take a little, you'll see. So the king says, okay, bring a big board or something. Bring a board, takes a little pinch in his fingers, right, of this, throws it at the board. All of a sudden, it turns into like thousands of knives and arrows and whatever it is, and it hits exactly all the bullseyes on it. So the king said, this is wonderful. Thank you very much. Why didn't you say anything? And the man said, well, you scared him so much, he got angry. He didn't have time to talk. So he says, okay, give me what do you want? He said, I'll give you money. I'll give you anything you want. You're saving the country. I have so many enemies. He says, all I want is just that decree. Go into my storehouse, into my treasure house. Take whatever you want. He goes into the treasure house, finds the decree, tears it up. And the king says, that's all you want, just to destroy the decree. And he says, give him 10 boxes full of diamonds and jewels, and he should take it back to his people, and he should have guards with him, bringing this money back to the Jews. So Nachum Ish Gamzu goes back, and on the way back, he stops off at this inn. He says, what was that? He said, well, I don't know how it happened, but there was this dirt inside of the box. He knew what happened. There was dirt inside of the box, and it turned into this precious, darts and everything. And the owner of says, oh, thanks a lot. He says, you know how much dirt I've got? He filled up boxes and boxes with dirt, chests, brought it to the king, opened it up, and it was dirt, and the king killed him. Happy ending. So what's the point? Says the point is, the Rebbe is going to say, the point is that because Nachum Gamzu said, this is good, Gamzu Latova, and it wasn't good. It was the worst possible thing in the world. The king opened the box and there was dirt inside. It should have happened to him what happened to the hotel owner afterwards. Dirt. The king would have said, off with his head and off with all the Jews' head. Worst thing in the world. So it came out that it was much, much better than even the diamonds. The king didn't need diamonds, but he didn't need this. How did it happen? Because Nachum Ish Gamzu said, this is good. So therefore he transformed, which apparently was terrible, that the box instead of diamonds had dirt in it, but he transformed it into something better than he could ever imagine. He thought he was just bringing them diamonds. Instead it came up. So it's the same thing. It depends on how we look at things. That's going to be the same point with the bronze snake, as we're going to talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's learn the Devar Malchut.